are completely discourage-worthy. Banks or India's finances. These wild speculations, particularly related to banks or India's finances, are completely discourage-worthy. I have a strong request to the media that any such story, unless you verify it with the competent authority, let us say for the finance ministry related matters with the finance ministry or RBI related matters with RBI. If you do not verify it, I strongly request that the media should not further it by printing it or having discussions on it without corroborative, inputs from the concerned. I'm not stopping you all from doing what you want. Absolutely free. But I'm also equally thankful to Sapna to say it was floating around freely, but it had nothing in it, meaning no riveting fact or basis. And if it is with no riveting fact or basis, please do cross check like you're doing now before it is furthered. Because financial sector today is inundated with a lot of freewheeling advice in the social media. I'm not here to curb anybody, but this is a very sensitive area. We don't want freewheeling advices being taken seriously by people without knowing whether they were authorized or not. We need to be careful. We want people to be well informed. We want more and more people advising them. All right. But let it be responsibly done.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's nothing for me to say at this stage. Although you did recognize that it is an expensive business. That's your observation.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Shishir Sinha, Hindu Business, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. Ma'am, my question to you that since we are seeing, and Governor, sir, you can also respond to that. We are seeing interest rate rising not just on the deposit but also on the credit. So are we moving towards the higher interest regime? Because I mean we haven't seen changes in the policy rate for 9 times, but rate interests are rising on both credit and deposits. So what do you have to say?
No, that is for you to assess whether we are, it is a question of perception. So far as the Reserve Bank is concerned, the interest rates, both on the deposit side as well as in the credit side, they are deregulated. So banks fix their deposit rates, they fix their interest rates. The situation could vary from bank to bank. At times you would have seen certain banks launch a special drive to raise deposits. So they tend to give a higher rate of interest for deposit mobilization. We have seen situations where if the CASA deposits in a particular bank is low, and they want to raise the CASA deposit percentage in their overall deposit base. So temporarily for a few months, they increase the interest rates they pay on the savings bank accounts, deposit accounts, etc. So this is completely deregulated, and it's for the banks to decide, taking into account the overall financial sector and macroeconomic conditions and the situation with regard to their balance sheet. Now, with regard to, whether we are seeing some trend towards that, that is for you to assess. I would not like to say, but I think overall, if you see, there has been considerable amount of stability in our interest rate regime, whether with regard to the central bank, I'm not saying with regard to the central bank, but overall in the financial system, I think our interest rates have not been very volatile. They have been fairly stable.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Aftab from Reuters.
This question is for you. In the economic survey, the chief economic advisor suggested removing food inflation from inflation targeting. Do you support that idea, especially given that there will be a review for increases?
I don't know about the review, and economic survey is at liberty to write on things. Government maintains an arm's distance.
Thank you, ma'am. We can have Mr. Shailesh Shah.
पार्लियामेंट में प्रोटेस्ट हुआ था इंटरेस्ट उसको इंश्योरेंस पे जीएसटी रेट्स को लेकर, तो आपने बोला था कि ये जो है सही प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं है, इसको जीएसटी काउंसिल में उठाना चाहिए। तो क्या अगली जो जीएसटी काउंसिल की मीटिंग होगी उसमें इस पे कोई विचार किया जा सकता है?
मैं उधर भी ये जवाब दे चुकी हूँ कि 3 बार इससे पहले जीएसटी काउंसिल में मेडिकल इंश्योरेंस के ऊपर जो जीएसटी लगाया जाता है उसके ऊपर चर्चा हुआ है, और हर बार केंद्र सरकार के द्वारा ही नहीं, राज्य सरकार को के द्वारा भी विषय उठाते जाते हैं. सो यू सी वेयर इट इज कमिंग फ्रॉम. किसी को रोक नहीं है अगर एक इशू एजेंडा में आना है तो.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, with your permission, last two questions. So we have Mr. Tarun Sharma from Z.
मैम तरुण फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस। मैम बजट के अंदर मैम दो बड़े अनाउंसमेंट बैंकिंग सेक्टर के लिए हुए थे, एक एमएसएमई को लेकर और दूसरा डीआरटी को लेकर। तो मैम सर आपसे पूछना चाहेंगे कि जो क्रेडिट असेसमेंट सिस्टम है एमएसएमई के लिए जो नया अनाउंस आपने किया वो कब तक हम इम्प्लीमेंट होता हुआ देखेंगे? और दूसरा मैम जो डीआरटीज के लिए जो अनाउंसमेंट हुए थे आप कब से मैम हम देखेंगे कि वो पोस्ट जो है डीआरटीज के जो बेंचेस हैं वो बढ़ जाए, और जो 16 लाख करोड़ के जो केसेस हैं उसमें कितनी रिकवरी आप मैम देखते हैं कि हो सकती
See, only yesterday it has got passed. Technically, yesterday, day before. So we'd like to do it at the earliest because this year is only about 8 months, strictly, not even full 8 months. So it'll be done sooner rather than later.
Thank you, ma'am. Lastly, we'll have Mr. Dipankar Kumar from PPI.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. So, this is a question with regard to sovereign green bond. First auction which was done in May was scrapped, and last in July was also got tepid response. So, since RBI is the manager to government borrowing program, what is your suggestion for improving attractiveness of sovereign green bond? And ma'am, anything is being done to improve attractiveness of sovereign green bond?
Anything that is being done, sovereign green bond, if I have anything, I'll always talk to you all first. At the moment, I have nothing before.
The sovereign green bonds, just I would like to add to what the finance minister said, that it was started last year. And 20,000 crores, I think, was what was included in last year's borrowing program. This year also it is done. So it's a new, it's a new concept which we are, new sort of kind of bond, borrowing which has, the product has, which has been launched. And Government of India has already, there are certain sectors and subsectors against, in which these proceeds of these bonds can be utilized. So one major announcement made in this year's budget about developing a climate taxonomy, I think that will have significant long-term impact on mobilization of funds for the green sector, not only through the green bonds, but also overall financing of the, the climate and the green sector. So that also, that is just, I wanted to bring that into perspective to say that that's a kind of a measure which will have a long-term impact. Otherwise, it's a new product which has been launched. We are constantly, as debt manager of the government, we are watchful of what exactly is happening in the market. If there is something needs to be done, we will interact with the government and see, deal with it.
Some of them who didn't come in time came later, in case you want to check up. Yeah, yeah.
So I'll request Ms. Deepshika Sikala.
My question again on the deposits. Is there a case for some policy intervention, do you see? And one to the governor. Government has been doing its bit on the fiscal deficit, on consolidation front. In terms of rate cut, I mean, when do we see a response from the RBI?
Should I take this question? You see, there was on a slightly lighter vein, there was a book written several decades ago that everybody loves drought. So I think all the time you talk of rate cut, But you have to also remember that there are two sides to this whole issue. There is a set of, there are depositors, there are borrowers. I think somehow in the public space, the narrative is always built up keeping in mind the interest of the borrowers. But there is silent mass of depositors, middle class people, pensioners, fixed income people. That also is an issue. I'm just flagging it. I mean, but so far as the interest rate reduction, etc., whatever I had to say with regard to monetary policy, we have elaborately said it 2 days ago. So I don't want to add anything further with regard to the future course of monetary policy and with regard to the stance, with regard to the rates, because whatever we had to say, we have said. With regard to the deposits, as I mentioned, I think just before you came, that I don't know whether you were in by that time. Interest rates by the banks, both in the lending side as well as deposit sides, both are completely deregulated. And it is now for the banks. You see, RBI, from RBI's point of view, we are highlighting this issue. It's a kind of a proactive caution to the banks, because what happens is there will always be some kind of a mismatch between deposit growth and credit growth. There will be some mismatch. Two questions arise. One is, what is the gap in the growth rate between deposits and loans? Second thing is, how persistent and how long it is going on. In our case, we have been witnessing about 300 to 400 basis points gap between deposits and credit growths. Deposits are lower. It has been observed for the last few months. So at the moment, our effort is to just highlight this point. It's a kind of a proactive cautioning for the bank managements that going forward, this may create structural issues with regard to liquidity management. As it stands today, we don't see a crisis or anything, but it has to be attended. It has to be dealt with by the individual banks. So if it goes on like this unattended, it can lead to a potential structural liquidity management issue. So it's a kind of a advanced cautioning of the banks. And in the last monetary policy statement, we have also, I have touched upon it. And we have said that banks with their wide branch network, they are expected to come out with innovative products and services to mobilize deposits. So we are constantly discussing this in our interaction with the private sector and public sector banks. We do discuss this issue at length. And as the finance minister mentioned, she also, I think, as far as I know, she has been discussing this issue in the finance minister's interaction with the bank managements. So this is something which the banks will have to really respond.
Yes, sir.
If there is a case for intervention of the policy,
That is, if you're presuming that deposit is the only thing which I have to promote. I want to promote every possible avenue in which people would want to invest.
You see, any policy initiative, we have deregulated, India has deregulated interest rates. Now, if you go back again to regulate interest rates and whether in the credit side or deposit side, it can be, it can be very retrograde, going back on economic reforms. That
And
is another
possibly
angle.
distorted.
And it will also distort the markets. That's absolutely right. It will distort the markets. And one thing which came up in our internal discussion, in fact, the deputy governor has been pointing it out, is that today the credit lending has become digital. So there is very fast growth in lending. Deposit mobilization is still in the physical mode. So there is a kind of a structural change which has happened in the economy. Banks will have to come out therefore with innovative approaches to mobilize deposits.
Sorry, this answer is becoming long, but it's fairly interesting for everybody, and therefore it's worth extending the conversation. See, it's right that credit is going through the digital format and collection of deposit is not. And I think, if I'm not wrong, governors at his will to correct me. Huge big deposits have always been a very lazy banker's job. Nice, I got a big deposit. That's going to take care of a whole lot of things. But the trickles which come are the ones which are going to be your bread and butter, money to bank on, lending regularly. So that trickle was the emphasis long time ago, deposit mobilization, which cared nothing for the other side. Now we've gone over this side completely. Big bank deposits and great, my manager has met his target. Whereas what is the work of the staff, which is literally doing the footwork in the ground, the old fashioned style. Now you can probably call them on the phone or send them an email, but requisite small deposits. That's also one of the very critical job of a bank. It might be grinding monotony, but that's where your bread and butter lies.
And the share of CASA deposits, in fact, in a BFSI, I'm sorry, this
No,
answer
that's
is
right.
becoming long. In a BFSI event about 3 weeks ago, I had said that I had given out the data. The share of CASA deposits in the overall deposit, which was about 43% about a year ago, has come down to about 39%. So therefore, banks also need to focus more on these deposits, not just some bulk deposits. And that is something which again we keep on flagging to the bank managements during our interactions, because the high value deposits, the flight can be very fast.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, a few more questions, or shall we close?
Except you.
I think maybe a couple of more questions.
Prashant, sir.
Sir, given high level of borrowed consumption by households, so do you think that the indebtedness of households is building up and will be a new area for NPs going forward?
No, that will be my answer will be as good or as bad as a pure speculation. And this issue I have highlighted in the last monetary policy. There are four points which I mentioned under the financial sector in the last monetary policy statement day before. And one of the issues is that banks also need to monitor the leverage, the household leverage before sanctioning new loans, and the underwriting standards, etc., should be mindful of what kind of household leverage is building up vis-a-vis individual lenders. And the November last year, we announced those macroprudential measures with regard to the, with regard to the personal loans. That has yielded good result. Overall numbers are looking, there has been considerable improvement, but there are still one or two sectors which I have highlighted in the monetary policy statement, where I think more work needs to be done by the banks.
Thank you, sir. So one last question. I'll request Mr. Prakash Priyadarshi from ET Now.
Hi, ma'am. My question is regarding Bangladesh crisis. How significant is from the standpoint of the Indian economy, and what countermeasures that the government is taking?
Well, at the moment, I think you've had the Prime Minister's observations coming, statement by the External Affairs Minister in the Parliament, and the efforts that are being taken to ensure that our borders are safe. I would say at this stage that many. And I've also had discussions and calls coming on the matter of our textile garment investments which are in Bangladesh, many of whom who come from Tamil Nadu. The investments went there in good faith because they thought textile garment and the knitted were could be, and they did well having gone there. The exports from Bangladesh also increased, and I know also because of the duty and quota liberal approach that we have towards low income countries, the LDCs, they could even export to India, and we were therefore importing cloth. So particularly the garment and knitted fabric sector is seeing a bit of uncertainty because of that. Whether I hope that is seeing a bit of uncertainty because of that. Whether I hope that the investments are all safe. Other than that, at this stage, it's too early for me to see what kind of an impact this situation in Bangladesh will have on our economy. I hope that the interim government will settle things sooner rather than later so that both the people of Bangladesh and India can get back to normalcy.
I think there's just one question here. He has been trying for a long time to attract your attention, but let that be last question because FM has got other commitments, so we have already
Sir,
overshot.
This question is slightly related to the green bond question that Pankaj asked. In April policy, you had said that RBI will facilitate green bond trading at GIFT City. So if you could elaborate how that is going and what is the update on that front. And to ma'am, one simple question. Governor Das will be longest serving governor in next few months in the modern era. So will it be right to assume that we can have longest serving governor ever after December? Thank you.
No, IFSC green bonds, we are in discussion with the IFSC. It will be operationalized very soon. We have made this announcement. It will be operationalized very soon. Sorry? I think H2 it should be possible. Yeah. The Deputy Governor confirms that it will be possible in H2 very much.
Thank you so very much, sir. With this, we come to the end of this press conference. Thank you, Honorable Finance Minister, Honorable Minister of State and Governor. Have a nice day.
पनोरमा ग्रुप, जो सोचता है वो करता है।